Today, I'm honored to share the space with Dr. Ogechi Nwoko. She is a mother, a physician, an entrepreneur, and a woman whose postpartum journey took a path that few have prepared for. While in her fourth year of medical school, Ogechi gave birth to her son, a beautiful child who was soon diagnosed with a rare genetic condition. That moment shifted everything that she thought she knew about motherhood, medicine, and herself. In this episode, we talk about the deep and personal side of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum when the journey doesn't go as expected. We're going to explore what it's like to become a mother, a medical advocate at the same time, and how Ogechi found strength, support, and purpose in the face of uncertainty. Ogechi, thank you so much for agreeing to be on here. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. And I mean, you put it so beautifully. And I also want to add that I think we met during my postpartum period.
We did. Yeah, we actually met when I was having, was it a baby shower? I think it was a baby shower or first birthday. It was like Tando's first birthday or something like that. Which one was it?
I think she was 6 months old. Tyler was
Okay.
a couple weeks old, and she was 6 months older than him. But you guys were having like a party of some sort. I don't remember what you were celebrating.
I remember we had a lot of parties. I want to say it was probably either a baptismal or not a baptismal, probably a dedication or Tando's first birthday. But I do remember meeting you at that time and Oni bringing you and introducing us together. And it's just been interesting watching our parallel lives unfold. And so we talk about how motherhood was, and I know your story, but our audience doesn't. And so I want you to just start off and just talk about who is Ogechi before Tayo? Tell us a little bit about her.
Okay. Yeah. The time before Tyler, before I became a mom, I was just honestly a super ambitious, but really lackadaisical flower child type of person. I was really social. I was in med school and business school because I think I was just in this time period in my life where I felt like whatever I wanted to do, I could do. I was super gung ho about becoming a surgeon. And then I figured I want to get this business degree because I realized that there were some other things that I cared about outside of just operating.
Mm,
But I just, what I remember most about that time is really never feeling like there was anything I couldn't do.
mm,
So even though those were my plans career wise, I decided to start a family. And I didn't even think that that was going to slow me down or change anything.
mm,
It turned out that it changed everything. But yeah, that's what I really remember about that time. I had no fear at all.
mm, mm. Driven would be the word, driven. And so as in typical surgeon form, I used to have a one surgical friend who used to say nothing would stop her. She would go out, travel, party, operate, do all the things. And I'm like, girl, when are you gonna rest? And she used to say, I'll rest when I die. There's too much life to live. So
I remember even like when I would talk to my other classmates in med school, surgery was everyone's rotation. They hated it. They felt like the life was being sucked out of them and they couldn't do
mm,
anything. But that's how I knew it was for me because I could be there all day. And then when I got home, I still had energy to do other things. And I really enjoyed what I was doing in the hospital and outside of the hospital. So yeah, I think it made sense for me at the time.
wow. Then you got married. When did you get married at that time?
I got married in 2017.
Mhm.
So that was right at the beginning of my third year of med school, actually.
Crazy. I always say to get married and have a child in medical school, that's definitely an accomplishment. That's an accomplishment. And soon after you got married, when did you find out you were pregnant?
That about almost 2 whole years later, I think. Yeah, because I finished that third year and then yeah, so fourth year.
Fourth year.
The end of my med school journey was a little bit non-traditional because that's when I
Mm,
decided to go to business school.
okay.
I was really in my little break from medical school and in my business school period when I was pregnant. And
Hmm.
so I was actually pregnant through most of my business school classes.
Wow.
Tayo was born in January of 2019, which was right at the start of my second semester of my first year of business school.
Wow. Wow, that must have been truly demanding to go through pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum. Did you find any complications, or did you have an unremarkable pregnancy or childbirth experience?
Pregnancy was definitely, I would say, kind of unremarkable. It was fun, but I would say for me and my friends who also decided to have kids while we were in our training programs, you had to decide between whether you wanted to continue and stay in line with your cohort or whether you wanted to take a break. There was never a, it was hard. Most people
Mhm.
decided to just try their best to keep going, and which is why people were going into labor in the hospital,
Mm.
having the baby, and going right back to the hospital as soon as they were out of the hospital. Going back to the hospital to learn right after they gave birth. And that was my experience too. I was out on a Tuesday and then back in classes on a Thursday.
Wow.
I think I one day off.
Wow. One day after giving birth?
One day
No.
after the hospital. So I was in the hospital for 2 days. The 2 days after I gave birth, I came home. The room was already set up. I basically put Tayo in his crib, set up my little breastfeeding station. I took like a day to like level set on that, and then the very next day I went back to regular life.
Wow. And so that is a choice that you're making, because if you choose to take the time off, then you surely will be penalized, because you may not have the opportunity to make up for that lost time, because there is no system in place to allow you to actually have that bonding time at home. And nobody is urging you to stay at home. They're giving you a choice. Like, you can
Yeah.
continue with your studies, or you can take this year off, or whatever you need to do to take care of your life, which is insanity when I think about that. How are you emotionally and physically going back to status quo after just a couple days of giving birth?
So I didn't put that much thought into what I needed to do. I just did it. The sacrifices that you make as a an adult that decides to be a physician, you
Mm,
are it's a game of delayed gratification already. Even if you take no breaks, you probably aren't earning like an adult salary until you're almost 30.
mm,
So if you decide that you want to also start a family, you're taking that out of your own pocket, because if you take a break to do that, you're not getting paid
mm,
and you're delaying, the end of this period of training where you're just not you just don't have any money. I'm like, I don't have no any other way to say it. You're just a broke student. So you can start a family if you want, but you will extend your time being a broke student.
mm. So now you're going through your postpartum, you're back at work, and are you trying to breastfeed? Are you trying to maintain that relationship, or did you decide to just do formula at this point?
I decided to breastfeed, and thank goodness the milk was coming. It
Mm.
was overflowing, but it was coming enough to keep me motivated. But one thing that I didn't realize about breastfeeding is that it takes a good chunk out of your day.
Yes, that's why I'm like, how are you doing this while you are in your classes? Because that is now you have to ask for the permission to go pump.
Yep. And there
Wow.
weren't this to do that set up.
Now, even in hospitals I've worked in, there is no lactation room, but story for another day. I want to shift back to Tayo. When did you first notice that something might be different with your child?
Reason, when I was pregnant, I had this sense that my child was blind before he was even born. I didn't have any, there was nothing, I never had an abnormal test, no abnormal readings. My anatomy scan at 20 weeks came back pristine. The actual delivery was flawless. I was having fun. I had 10 of my friends in the room with me, singing songs and playing with me. Tayo came out perfectly fine. But for some reason, I had that thought when I was pregnant.
Wow. How did you manage that thought during pregnancy? Did you feel like it was intrusive? Did you kind of brush it off your shoulder? How did you manage those feelings?
While I was still pregnant, it was easy to brush off because it didn't make any sense. I couldn't tie it to anything.
Mm.
So I was just like, that's weird. That's a weird thing to think. And I just move on. But after he was born, even though, like I said, there was no sign of any issue, those feelings started to become a little bit more intrusive and harder to ignore.
Wow. In those first couple of weeks, were there any behaviors or things that, well, first of all, when did he first have his first seizure? How many weeks or months was he?
He was maybe 2 days. I
Oh,
think at first,
wow.
yeah. Well, we didn't know that they were seizures at that time. We didn't realize that they were seizures until he was 10 weeks old.
Mm.
But we were noticing something that we just thought we used to say he was afraid of his farts.
Mm.
That's I actually still have videos of him doing it and us laughing about it. He would be asleep in his little swing, and every now and then, out of the blue, he would raise his hands and feet and like wake up and like kind of stare off and then go back to sleep. And we're like, and sometimes it would happen when he farted, or he would fart during, but really all of his muscles contracting. We didn't realize that he was like having a spasm.
Oh, wow. And then when was it that you finally were like, okay, we need to get this evaluated? Did it end up that you were hospitalized or was it sort of in follow-up with the pediatrician?
So the first time I asked something about it, because we were calling it, he's afraid of his farts, and we were
Mhm.
laughing about it. But I also had my mommy senses were already tingling, and like once he came out, those feelings did get stronger. So I was laughing, but I was concerned inside,
Mm.
and that bubbled up to something that I could actually articulate very well by the time he was 7 days old.
Wow.
So we did bring it up on that first well visit to the pediatrician, and we were like, "Hey, he's doing this thing. It looks like he gets startled at random. What is that?" And
Mm.
the pediatrician kind of brushed it off. He said he said, "Oh, it's just the Moro reflex when kids are about to drop and then they flare their hands up, a primitive reflex."
Right.
Which was something that was I was familiar with as because it's something that we learn about in
Right.
pediatrics. I said okay, but I don't know. It didn't really. I still had my concerns, but every time I tried to say something about it, people were like, "No, like he's fine." It got to the point where I'd bring it up around my family, and then, "Okay, just stop that, stop this, like stop."
Mm.
You're like, I almost felt like I was kind of going crazy.
Mm.
And that kind of culminated in like a full on breakdown. I was about to go crazy because I felt like something was wrong with my kid, and nobody believed me.
That's super hard. That's super hard to feel like you're the only one who's seeing something and nobody is and everybody's ignoring you. And essentially, you do feel like you're going crazy because people look at you like you're crazy. They look at you like you're anxious. They look at you like you're overthinking. And that's also really hard to navigate postpartum because like you already have the emotions and everything. And so how did you kind of sift through the weeds and say, hey, listen to me. Like y'all need to listen to what's going on. There is something wrong with my child.
The feeling got too strong, and then I just switched into action really. So it all kind of came to a head when I finally took some time away from him. Actually,
Mm.
that's what made it really really clear. So I was in school and we were together, and I think I didn't leave him until he had gotten through his first 2 months. So when he
Mhm.
was 8 weeks old, I went to Europe for a trip
Yeah.
for part of my business school program. I was doing like a strategy consulting practicum. But yeah, so I was on this trip. I was in Europe, and so I'm FaceTiming him every day, a million times a day, and they're putting the phone in his face and they're like, "Oh, say hi to mommy." And I'm looking at him, and I started noticing that he was having nystagmus.
That's when his, just for our listeners, it's abnormal movements of the eyes, which usually signifies that there's something, depending on the direction, it's either ear or something in the brain. And so in this case, there's probably something going on in his brain.
Hmm. And this just increased the crazy talk. Oh, Ogechi's crazy because I would say, look, his eye just, his eye just was, it was jiggling. And they were like, I didn't see anything. I was like, I just saw it.
Oh my gosh.
You need to stop this. Like, there's nothing happening. No, like, so, but I would see it
Mm,
on FaceTime, and then they would turn and look at him, and it stopped already, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
mm,
And so, doing that and not actually physically being with him, it quickly started to tear me apart. By the last day of that trip, I was at the mall in Berlin, just buying trinkets and mugs and stuff to bring back for my family. And I broke down on the steps outside the mall. I just fell to the floor and I was crying because I was like, "There's something wrong with my baby, and I don't know what it is." But I knew without a doubt that there was something wrong with him, and I just was overwhelmed. But luckily, I was going straight home, and by this time, like the rest of the world has already faded away, and
mm,
like I just I just needed to get in front of my kid.
mm.
I knew there was something wrong with him. I just didn't know what it was. Shoot, I haven't thought about that in a while.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, those, it can really, I don't know if this is a first time you've kind of recalled that incident, but sometimes you don't know how just retelling that story can kind of conjure up those emotions. And so definitely, I get it. Take your time for sure.
Phew, okay,
Mm.
okay. So yeah, time started moving really, really fast
Yeah.
from from that point on. Literally from my breakdown on the steps outside of this random mall in Berlin to somewhat getting a diagnosis. Like
Mm.
I was in some sort of like week-long nightmare from that point on. So I made it home,
Mm.
and as soon as I get home, I ran upstairs to his room and I grabbed him because I've been seeing this thing over FaceTime that no one else sees. So like now I want to look at him myself
Yeah.
and see if I see it again. And it's not that it's happening all the time. It's happening every now and then.
Mm.
And mind you, knowing me, I packed the schedule. So we actually only had one day in between me coming home from Europe and my family going to California because that's where I'm from and that's
Mm.
where my son's dad is from. And none of our family in California had met Tayo yet, except for my mom who had flown out. So I was bringing him back to California to spend some time with my sisters and for my dad for the first time. Yeah, so we went to California, and mind you, I'm still in this first 24 hours of observing my son myself while I have this sense that there's something wrong with him that nobody else has really witnessed. And so we get to my parents' house and everyone's happy to be together. Like I'm meeting my nieces and nephews and like there's so much like joy in the house. And here I come with my superstitious, there's something wrong with my baby. And everyone's like, okay, why do you keep saying this? They were like, I know this is a postpartum podcast, and
Mhm.
one thing people always talk about is postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis,
Mm.
and those were words that were thrown around. Like they were
Wow.
like,
They were getting ready to commit you.
yes, yes. So they were like, Ogechi, you need to take some time off. Like,
Mm.
give us the baby, go do something fun. This was my sister talking, my middle sister, who is a nurse, so she's a
Mm.
healthcare professional too. And so I left Tayo with my sister, and me and his dad went to a Lakers game.
Yeah.
And so we were away for a couple hours, and I was like, okay, maybe it is all in my head. Like I'm gonna try to calm down. I'm gonna try to stop saying this.
Mm.
And then I get back home, and my sister has this look on her face,
Mm.
and I already knew she saw it. And
Mm,
like I saw it. And immediately she said it. Like, mind you, I've my anxiety was so high. I've been like going crazy for days. I just barely took a break, went to the Lakers game, and I was finally coming to their side of like, let me calm down. And
mm,
as soon as I see my sister, I'm like, I knew it. And I just at that point, I was done talking to people. I
mm,
packed my son up. I was like, I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to the hospital. And I went, and she was like, she didn't know what was going on either, but she was
mm.
like, I could tell that she saw it. And so
Yeah.
we, at that point, that was enough for me. So I took him to the hospital that night. If mind you, it's already late because this is after a basketball game. So we're
Yeah.
talking 10 p.m. So we drove to UC Irvine emergency room. We didn't even go to a children's hospital emergency room
Wow.
because I was so frantic that I just went to the nearest emergency room.
Mm,
And we spent the night in the emergency room. I was, in that bed with him
yeah.
while we were basically waiting for a transfer. I basically, was giving his history, how old he was. They were asking me about my pregnancy. Was there anything abnormal? I'm telling them no, 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 but this is what I saw. And we spend that night in the emergency room, and the next morning we are transferred to the nearest children's hospital, which is
Mm,
Children's Hospital of Orange County. And when we get to Children's Hospital of Orange County, something changes
mm,
with my, like before I came in because I'm seeing these intermittent episodes of nystagmus. I'm just seeing random little eye wiggling, I'll
yeah.
call it. That changed.
Mm.
My son was going completely unconscious.
Oh my.
Luckily, we were already at chalk by the time this started happening. So they immediately put him on an EEG, and they saw no normal brain activity,
Oh my God.
none. And my world stopped. Yeah. So at this point, the Ogechi's crazies, like that stops.
Mm,
And we're there's still my family is still kind of catching up because mind you he's there with me. His dad is like doing the back and forth between like the hospital and back to the house to like tell people what's going on, but
mm,
I'm like not leaving his side, and I'm just trying to figure out what's happening. So he's on the EEG. A resident is the one who came to give me that news. He told me that what they were seeing was something called a burst suppression.
mm.
That anything to me at the time. I know general things, but you don't really learn a lot of you don't learn anything about EEGs in your
Yeah.
normal medical school curriculum. But one thing I always say about anything is I can read.
Mm,
So I started reading, and we basically entered this game of trying to figure out what was happening, what the diagnosis is, what's causing the seizures. There was a while where we thought maybe it was a movement disorder and not a seizure disorder.
yeah.
That was maybe 12 hours of hope to even think that it was that. So I started going down the steps of, okay, well, hopefully he just has this and it's not this. And every time we would come up against one of those like scenarios, we would lose that, like that those first couple weeks of trying to figure out what was going on with my son was a lot of L's. Like
Mm,
every time we tried a new medicine, it wouldn't work. Like we would get so hopeful, but the situation wouldn't get better.
wow.
There was the fact that we didn't have insurance.
Mm, girl, I don't even know how you even navigate that. The finances, did you just put them aside and just not even think about it at that time and deal with it later?
Yeah, and it became easy for us to do that because like the bills we were seeing were so preposterous.
Astronomical. They're so ridiculous.
Literally, like I have a bunch of papers on my desk. I was like, like I literally
That's what I did postpartum. I looked at this bill. I ain't paying this bill. Shoot, worry about this later. Worry
mhm,
about this 2 years postpartum. Shoot. I was like, the Nikki bill is crazy. Psh, tossed it. Not even worried about it.
tossed it. If somebody came and they said, "Hey, yeah, you're gonna have to find $10,000, I would probably like, oh man, I gotta find $10,000. But when somebody comes to you and they say you gotta find $800,000,
That's crazy. It's like, whatever, forget this is crazy. Just take this somewhere else, please. Don't even bother me.
yeah,
Don't even bother me. Don't even. That's what I tell people now when they come in and I'm like, and they're like, I just want to get this bill. I'm like, ma'am, you're in the ER. We're not even going to worry about that bill. We're going to worry about taking care of you and this child and then everything else just goes. So, Ogechi, you are in the hospital with Tayo, and he is undergoing just diagnostics. How are you feeling at this time? How is your mental health? How are you coping with everything going on around you?
it was extremely overwhelming. It was the most visceral sadness I've ever felt in my life. Like it physically hurt. And then so I had just come home from 2 weeks of being in Europe, and I was like struggling to keep my milk alive while I was in Europe because I was away from him. And now I'm with him and I'm basically smothering him because I'm in the hospital with him in this little tiny room. And I'm super sad. And I'm also like overflowing with milk.
Mm,
And something about that just brought me more sadness.
mm. Is your mom, your sisters, are they with you during this process? Is there anything that they can say to soothe your soul?
Honestly, that's the only thing that brought me out of it. For a while, there was a lot of hours where it was just me and him.
Mm,
We were just in the hospital together. Again, my sister, there's three other newborns at home. So like there's a lot going on for the family.
mm,
And my sisters are at home and they're thinking about me all the time. They want to talk to me. Everyone wanted to talk to me.
mm.
And actually I went mute.
Oh.
It was overwhelming and all of a sudden I like completely lost the ability to use my voice. It was so weird. It wasn't voluntary. I just couldn't talk anymore.
Conversion. Is that what that's what would you say was conversion?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the mind is very interesting that in a traumatic period of time, it can go into this state where you don't talk, you don't move, and there's nothing that you can do to snap out of it. And that's called a conversion disorder. How long were you in that period, that space?
I was kind of stuck like that for a couple of days actually
Wow.
in the hospital. And that's when my family started to really freak out. And my son's dad. Up to that point, everyone's concerned, but they know that I live in the hospital. So they're like, and they still see like a newborn, so they feel like it can't be that bad. Whatever it is, we're gonna figure it out. And they still have this idea that this is like a thing, and then Tayo's gonna have a normal life. And
Mm,
kind of ask me a lot of questions. And I'm talking to his doctors, and I'm immediately coming to an understanding of how severe the diagnosis was.
mm,
So I'm immediately coming to understand that there's a 50% mortality rate by age 2. And that's like best case scenario. Well, no, that's that. But even if he was to survive past those 2 years,
mm,
I knew that it was going to be with nothing that I had thought that we were going to be able to do together. I
mm.
knew that that was going to be without walking, without talking, with a lot of struggles, a lot. I was falling down a rabbit hole of research. It was either people trying to call me or me doing research, and the research was not looking good. I was seeing kids on trach vents. I just like went silent. Like I remember like they were like shaking me. They were like, "Okay, please, 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 please." They're like, "Don't do this now. Don't do this now." And I felt like I was so they were right in front of me, but I felt like I was so far away from them for
Mm.
some reason. Like there was so much distance I would need to travel to get to my actual mouth and speak to them. And I didn't snap out of that until my son went into status epilepticus for the second time during this hospital stay. And something about that kind of snapped me out because I was like, he's not, he's like, he's been pretty unresponsive, but now he's really unresponsive, and I wanted something to be done about it. So I was like, I snapped out, and I remember the first thing asked for was for like a nurse to come and do a heel stick and check his glucose.
Mm,
I was just like, why is he like why is he completely unresponsive? And from that moment on, like that woke me back up. I was able to like, I don't know, get back inside of my body in some extent, to some extent, but it was in a very specific mode, and it was in a like work mode.
mm.
But no, that was better than nothing. So I kind of like lived in that mode for 2 years.
Wow. I think it's really important to highlight. I do a lot of talking about postpartum care and moms taking care of themselves and all these things, but when you have a child who has a rare condition and your entire being, your entire energy, everything goes towards that child, how do you even begin to navigate taking care of yourself? Like your postpartum doesn't look the same. And for a mom who is in your shoes, who has a child with a rare condition, whether genetic or not, how do they navigate postpartum with this going on? Like you obviously had the resources and the family, and even, but you just said it took 2 years to come out of fight and flight. What advice can you give our moms who have been in your shoes or are in your shoes?
The advice I would give is don't do it alone.
Mm,
So let other people in, let them help you. And whenever you can, yes, you are a warrior for your child, but whenever you can, you need to pay attention to yourself for your child.
mm,
But do a better job if you get that rest. And like you have to survive
mm.
to continue to be their warrior. So don't ignore that part. I mean, the other thing I will say is I was grotesque after like my hair was matted. I was in the because I refused to leave.
Mm.
They said little bathroom in there. I was using that. Sometimes people would bring me things, but I was wearing the same sweater for the entire week. What's it called? And then my milk was going crazy. So I was usually like walking around with a milk stained shirt too.
Oh.
It was just a mess. And honestly, the when I started to actually feel a little bit better is when I did finally leave. Leaving felt impossible. I felt like there was something in me that was like, don't do it. You can't. But when I did, I went home and I took a shower in the house. I saw the other babies.
Oh.
I sat down with my sister, like in between her legs, and she coiled my hair down. And like I got a little bit of rest and I needed that strength to continue. And it's really important. And you have to fight that. There's something in you that tells you do not take it, that
Mm.
you survive your rest. But your kid will survive your rest.
Mm. Watching you over the last few years and the strength that you have displayed, the purpose that you have displayed, I am so happy that you took the opportunity to even just share your story because there are so many moms who just don't know how they can do it. And I want you to share what does life look like for you and Tayo? And because I see you guys, you are living your life. And Tayo has such an amazing mom and I love watching it. And I know that took a lot to get to that place. And so just share a little bit about what life looks like, the adventures, what you're doing now. Because I know a lot has changed. Ogechi pre-pregnancy, Ogechi with early baby, and Ogechi now are completely different.
Yeah. For one, I think that it put my priorities in check. I was able to make decisions for myself in a way that I wasn't doing before. And it's funny because I had so much more freedom then, but I was making a lot of choices based off of what I thought I was supposed to be doing, and it was really hard for me to pivot from that or grow or change when I needed to. Even if I felt within my soul that I needed to, I would still I would be slow at it.
Right.
Change was slow. But there's something about that pressure cooker that Tayo put me in that I can change quick now.
Mhm.
As soon as I get that feeling, especially having that intuition that there was something wrong with him, and then that becoming very, very true, it let me know that, oh, these feelings mean something.
Right.
And so I've definitely learned to trust it a
Mm.
lot more. And it's been the greatest gift, actually. Whenever I get that little instinct that it's time for a change or that I need to do something, I would just do it immediately. And a lot of times it ends up being a really good decision for me and Tayo. Of course, some of the things don't pan out. But yeah, like I don't take my time. I don't take my time with him for granted. I wasn't sure if I was even going to have him past 2 years. A sidebar that I was having, internal struggle I was having before he was born, was I was in this business school program and I was loving it. And it was opening my eyes up to all these other forms that my career could take outside of just being in an operating room. But pre-Tayo, because I had made that commitment to 5 years of a general surgery residency, there was no way I was going to veer from that.
Mm.
But after Tayo, I just felt really comfortable following my instincts, following my guts. And I made changes that made sense for us. First of all, I mean, just dealing with him and a general surgery residency were just not going to mix.
Right.
I tried for a little bit. I really didn't want to let it go for a while. Like I went through the entire application process with him. I matched. I was starting to build what my intern year as a surgery resident life was going to be like. And I knew very early in that year that I was like, I don't want to do this.
Mm.
Not, it's not coming together easily. And
Right.
I was able to actually allow myself to make that change. But yeah, I've made a lot of my decisions have been like led by Tayo. I bought a house in 2021. I moved because I already knew Tayo was going to be wheelchair bound. I was living in a 3-story townhouse where his room was on the third floor, and this was not going to be an accessible living situation. So I ended up moving. Mind you, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother rabbit hole I won't go down. But it took I toured 60 houses to find one accessible house in Metro Atlanta.
So crazy.
Yeah, but like somehow that instinct to move helped us make the decision to do it at like the perfect time in the market. Like I don't know, I can move and change really quick now, and I'm so grateful for that
Mm.
connection to that feeling that he gave me. And as you know, like yeah, I travel a lot. You
Mhm.
know, we garden together. We do tons of stuff together. I just feel so free, to be honest.
Yeah.
And like when I think back to my time in the hospital and how hard it was, it makes me feel so happy because we're happy. We're living. He's stable, and things aren't perfect, but we're thriving. That's it.
Exactly. I love that. I love that so much. What does healing look like for you now, physically, emotionally, and spiritually?
It looks like still making time for me
Mhm.
and things I want to do. I have to thank his grandma a lot for that because
Yes.
she stands in for me a lot. I have to thank you for that too because what really unlocked my flexibility and freedom was having a system of care for my son. And the first people who helped me with that were your family members and people who were helping you with Tondo, and they extended that same love and care to my son.
Oh.
So
I miss her.
you're from a different part of Africa than us. We
Yeah.
got real comfy with a different culture now. You know, all those things are normal in my house now. That's true. And I want to thank you for extending your family and your support system to us.
Of course, we do it again. We're supposed to be living next to each other, but we still, you never know. Is that house still on the market, by the way? Side note.
It
But,
is.
side note. But yeah, I'm so proud of you. And I just want to encourage you to keep sharing your story, keep living life. You've been through a really tough postpartum and look at how you have overcome. And so to my moms listening out there, you can do it. You can do it. I know it feels really, really tough, but I will tell you, when you conquer one obstacle, it's like you almost feel invincible, right? I tell people I never thought I would get a divorce, and because I just never thought about it, but getting a divorce made every other obstacle easier, right? Like it was like I can quit my job, right? I can start a business. I can sell my car. I can sell my house. Like I can literally do anything that seems hard because I've conquered this thing that I thought I would never have to go through. And so, and Ogechi just really amplified that. It's like she went through a really tough situation, and that opened up her mind and her space to be able to overcome other barriers, whether bigger or not as big. But yeah, Ogechi, if our people want to like reach you, where can they find you if they have questions about you or just want to like follow? By the way, Ogechi didn't talk about her love for plants.
Yeah.
She loves plants, and like between plants and travel, that is how she really protects her peace. So I don't know if you want to give out your handle for your Instagram, but I'll let you tell our listeners how they can reach out to you or follow you.
Yeah, yeah. I am obsessed. A garden will heal you.
Oh, sure will. It's so true.
But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Getch. And then I actually have a page dedicated all to gardening and how to honestly start like an urban homestead
Mm,
with small daily habits. Now I'm a couple years in now, and I have like huge harvests, like more vegetables and fruit than my household can eat. And
wow.
it's that much time. So if that's something that interests you, you can follow me at Garden of Oge on Instagram. There's also a nonprofit attached to that, and you can
Mm,
learn about that at gardenofoge.com.
I love it. By the way, I want to sell my house so I can start a garden. So you're gonna be my person.
Side of the dirt and get it going.
Yay. Well, thank you for coming on. And yeah, listeners, you heard it here. Take care. Are you navigating pregnancy and postpartum alone? Are you feeling overwhelmed by the lack of support? You're not alone, and you don't have to do this alone. With EM Care to You, I offer personalized in home and telemedicine support designed to guide moms through the challenges of the postpartum period. Whether you need total on call services or periodic check ins in the home, I help women recognize warning signs and I support you as your advocate. And I am here for you the entire step of the way. I want to create a postpartum plan that's all about you, your health, and your recovery. Follow me on Instagram at Dr. Choa for tips, resources, and there you'll find a way to book me. All right? DM me or email me if you have any other questions. Other than that, I'm on all social media platforms under Dr. Choa, DrChowa. Let's build a village of support. Let's give you the hope that you need to get through this period of time. Take care.